This just may be a formula you can follow to save your dream house. Tonight, we introduce you to a woman who was freed from foreclosure because she did her homework and ultimately beat the bank. Adanya Castro is headed to her attorney's office, victorious after waging a 2-year David and Goliath type struggle to save her mom's home from foreclosure.
The mortgage got wiped out, and so I have no mortgage payment. Everything was completely satisfied. How'd she succeed in saving the home where so many others have failed? I took it upon myself to pull all our closings, all our public record documents, and I started comparing paper to paper. Then she says she noticed something in the hundreds of documents she'd gathered. This person's name appears in this loan, and out of 5 loans that I had, that person came out 5 times. But the signatures varied 5 times, so that made me suspicious.
It appeared to have been forged signatures on some of those documents. The moment that we brought that information to light and we brought it to the judge, the parties resolved the case. And in that particular case, the bank agreed to forgive her entire mortgage debt. Attorney Arcia says the foreclosure documents indicated this was a case of robo-signing. That's where one or a few employees sign foreclosure paperwork in sort of an assembly line process. It's a practice the state attorney general and Florida's highest court came down hard on lenders and their lawyers for.
Welcome back here to Fox and Friends. Are you like millions of other Americans right now facing foreclosure? Well, did you know that there are 3 simple words to stall the whole process? It's like a ray of light in my life. Kendra Todd is a real estate analyst and a host of HGTV's My House is Worth What? Joins me now to talk more about this. Good morning to you, Kendra.
Oh, good morning, Clayton.
Okay, so the 3 words. What do people need to say to their bank to stall foreclosure?
Produce the note. It's really that simple, 3 little words. And if you think about it, it's kind of astonishing to think that banks are having, in many cases, a difficult time producing the original documentation that homeowners purchase or signed when they purchased a home. But University of Iowa did a study, and of 1,700 bankruptcy cases that had to deal with foreclosures, 40% of them, they couldn't find the original loan documentation.
This is unbelievable to me. So you call your bank, you call maybe your loss mitigation department at Chase or Citibank or wherever your mortgage is with, and you say, I know we're going through this foreclosure process. I just simply want you to produce the note. How long can you stall this process for?
Well, there have been some extreme cases in which people literally have stalled the foreclosure process for years. But at the very least, if they can't produce the note, maybe it'll stall it for a couple of weeks. But here's what's important to understand is delaying the foreclosure process doesn't solve the problem. It might drive straight to the heart of this whole mortgage mess. But if it buys you time to be able to negotiate with your bank for a lower rate, lower payments, it's great. But use the time that you have to do something productive with it. Okay, so in that remaining time that we have here, loan modification, forbearance, and a short sale, some of these things that people should try if they have 60 days of reprieve to get this done? Absolutely. Now, if you want to stay in your house, you really want to negotiate with the bank, possibly with a forbearance, which allows you to make less than the full monthly payments per month. Obviously, getting a lower rate and payment helps. But 68% of people who are able to negotiate lower rates still go into foreclosure. So it is important to try and figure out something on a financial level to help keep you in your home so President Obama's new housing plan can help you. It's going to help the people that are in their homes, not the ones that have lost them already. All right. Kendra Todd providing us with the 3 words, produce the note this morning. Great stuff. She's a real estate analyst and host of HGTV's My House is Worth What. Check her out there. Also check her out at KendraTodd.com. Thanks so much, Kendra.
A Bay Area couple has successfully blocked their lender from taking their home. A federal judge in San Jose brought the foreclosure process to a stop after the couple invoked a 3-word strategy first outlined here last month by 7 on Your Side's Michael Finney. Tonight, an update.
This home could be saved with 3 words. Produce the note. Facing foreclosure, owners Isabel and Richard Caparelli are using a novel legal strategy to hang on to their home. The couple went to federal court and basically said just 3 words: produce the note. The note is the legal document proving money is owed. Without it, the strategy goes, money can't be collected and there can be no foreclosure. Yesterday, a federal judge agreed, stopping the foreclosure in its tracks, and for now, the Caparellis can stay.
In foreclosure, the bank has to show it owns your house. But what most people don't know is that almost half the time, the banks don't have the paperwork to prove it in court. In many cases, it ends up lost or destroyed. It's a national problem. The banks would love to keep quiet because knowing that could be your best defense in fighting foreclosure.
Everything was all right until I refinanced.
Like many homeowners, Jackie O'Brien is behind on her mortgage. She bought her house near Clearwater, Florida in 2004, but in 2007 fell behind on her payments following a death in the family.
I'd returned to England and I was sort of giving support to family members and things like this. And when I came back to America, I was in default with my mortgage. I was behind with my payments.
She says she tried on several occasions to catch up on her payments with her bank, Wachovia. She showed us a photocopy of one catch-up payment for $8,500, but the bank wouldn't accept it and is foreclosing on her property. They wouldn't take your payments after that?
No, they wouldn't take my payments. That was it. No more. They didn't even want to talk to me.
But in foreclosure, she discovered the bank filed a motion for lost instruments. In other words, the bank lost or destroyed the actual proof that it owns her house.
I think the note has been sold on so many times and they've become very sloppy with their paperwork. It could be on a dumpster somewhere for all I know.
A bank losing a mortgage note may sound like a rare occurrence, but a recent study by law professor Catherine Porter found it happens nearly half the time.
What I found is that banks failed to attach a copy of the promissory note, that is the evidence that the consumer owes the debt, in 40% of the situations. So 4 out of 10 consumers were being asked by their bank to make payments on a mortgage, but the bank didn't provide the evidence to establish what those debts were.
And last November, a federal court ruled against Deutsche Bank and stopped them from foreclosing on 14 houses until they could produce the note. Those foreclosures are still in limbo.
If your case ends up in court, don't let the mortgage companies off easy. Make them produce the note.
Chris Hoyer is a Tampa attorney who's on the internet with a free website that teaches people how to fight foreclosure. He thinks people should fight, not for a free house, but for a better deal.
If you're about to lose your home, at least make them produce the note. Make them prove, first, that they have the note, the IOU, and second, that the person who's standing in court is a person authorized by the owner to take your home.
And that's just what Jackie O'Brien is planning to do.
I'd like to know who actually owns my mortgage. I'd like to know who I can deal with. I'm going to make them produce the note.
She says the bank is pressing on with foreclosure and won't agree on a catch-up payment. In addition, she says they keep tacking on fees.
The only way that they will do it is that if I pay them something like $20,000 in fees and things, they want me to pay all these extra fees that they've thrown in on top.
Catherine Porter says excessive and unnecessary fees are also a national trend.
The most disturbing thing we saw was that most banks simply don't tell consumers what these fees are for. So we saw thousands of dollars of charges that were labeled as other or miscellaneous. And so consumers have no way to know if, in fact, those fees are legitimate.
We contacted Wachovia to ask about the case, and they said, due to customer privacy concerns, we cannot give specifics into pending customer actions, but we will work with customers through the delinquency and foreclosure process to keep them in their homes. O'Brien says if the bank can't find her note, they should renegotiate a new mortgage without the fees and payments she can afford.
I want to pay, I'm not looking for a free ride or anything. I want to pay my mortgage. I want to get my life back on track.
O'Brien goes to court soon to find out how long she'll stay in her house. Attorney Chris Hoyer says if you get a foreclosure notice, you should get an attorney and find out when and where your foreclosure court date is. Do not just abandon your property and move out. For CNNMoney.com, I'm Greg Hunter.
All of a sudden, it's gone.
Merrill and Laverne Chandler are in their 70s. This is where they've lived for the last 13 years.
Well, our plan was to retire 5, 6, 7 years ago.
They found a home newly built on the outskirts of the town where they met, Salt Lake City, Utah. Within 3 years, though,
things changed.
We couldn't make the payments anymore.
Their story has a happy ending, though. They fought the bank, and they won.
It really is an awesome, awesome win.
Merrill Chandler Jr., their own son, helped them do it. Because of what they went through, he started a group called NAFTA, the National Association of Foreclosure Defense Advocates. He says when home prices peaked in 2006, it was the same time adjustable rate mortgages of the early 2000s came due.
What's happening in Southern California is that people who could afford a legitimate payment for the home that they bought are being reset to higher payments, and they can't afford those payments anymore.
NAFTA helped Merrill and Laverne realize their mortgage was securitized. What that means is their bank sold the deed to a larger investment bank, which sold it to a trustee firm, which sold it somewhere else, and so on and so on. Finding that loophole in the loan, proving no one could claim true ownership of the deed, saved them.
We were shocked to hear that we were in foreclosure.
This Northridge couple fell into default last November. They don't want to show their identities for fear their children will find out what's happening.
I cannot believe that we are going through this.
They should be out of their house by now, but because they have a lawsuit pending with their bank, they can stay. The memory they'll fight to forget was when their default notice appeared on the front door.
And they border it in bright blue tape so that the kids can't miss it. The neighbors can't miss it. And what they try to do is humiliate you.
And it can be intimidating. This family saying they remember seeing people taking photos of the house with the kids playing in the front yard. And it can be scary. Thousands of our neighbors are going through this. Loan modification forums have brought out tens of thousands over the last 2 years. For most, though, loan mods won't work. But what banks don't want you to know is this.
We can fight this.
Merrill and Laverne took their son's advice.
We were very fortunate because the judge saw that the securitization process occurred and he wasn't aware of actually who the owner of the debt was.
In a summary judgment, the house became what's called a permanent possession for the Chandlers.
Basically, it tells us that we can possess the property, but we don't own it.
But if they try and sell it, they have to pay off the lien that's on it.
No mortgage payments. They still have to pay property taxes, but because their mortgage was what millions of other mortgages signed between 2001 and 2007 were, the bank couldn't prove they owned the deed. It's a fact this Northridge couple is banking on now.
All we tried to do during this whole process was just make us current. This is your security. This is your kid's security. You can't walk away from this.
A woman almost lost her home after she took out a bad loan from an Orlando financial company.
Vanjanette Arlene says Haga Financial charged her thousands of dollars in interest and extra fees, so she filed a lawsuit. And as Channel 9's Liz Arts reports, Arlene took the company to court and won.
Vanjanette Arlene refinanced the house she has called home for 13 years after going through a divorce and hitting tough times. The day she closed on the loan, she felt taken advantage of.
The fees added up to almost $40,000 just in closing fees.
An outrageous amount for a $200,000 loan, but it got worse from there. Arlene's lender, Haga Financial, operating out of this Metro West townhouse, had pocketed $8,000 that was supposed to stay in escrow.
They were making her pay interest on money that was supposed to be held in escrow that they actually took for themselves and kept.
In the end, her lender tried to foreclose on her, demanding high fees on the interest-only loan that would have totaled nearly $300,000. But she took Haga to court and won.
Attorneys called this case groundbreaking. KEL has hundreds of others just like it. They say winning this case will set a precedent for all the others.
Attorney Matt Englert called this case predatory lending, and his firm is seeing more and more of it. He said the judge listened and ruled strictly by the law.
And if they lose, they're going to lose a lot more than they are by just working with the borrower and keeping them in their home.
We found one of Haga's founders, Brian Hertz, at the townhouse. He claimed to know nothing of the lawsuit, even denied he was Hertz, and told us to leave.
You can't film me.
Arlene can continue to fight for her house or let the bank take it and walk away free and clear, not owing a dime.
I feel like I can breathe again.
In Orlando, Liz Arts, Channel 9 Eyewitness News.
Haga Financial is owned by two Orlando men, Brian Hertz, who you just saw in the story, and Peter Vega. We were not able to track down Vega today.
A Kansas City mother of 4 who was to become homeless today is celebrating a victory.
A foreclosure on her home scheduled for today was stopped. KMBC 9's Bev Chapman is live at 60th and Swope Parkway with how she was able to avoid eviction. Bev?
Larry, we expected to see moving going on here today, or at the very least a padlock on that house, but that is not the case. Now, we told you about this house earlier this month. It's one of many involved in the national mortgage crisis, and it turns out someone who can do something about it is listening.
Today was the day that my home was supposed to be sold, and, you know, the only thing I could do is just thank God.
Illness and an adjustable rate mortgage caused her to fall behind on her payments. But on the brink of losing the house she and her children bought 5 years ago.
The story of Sharita is a story of the nation.
Retired attorney Sidney Willens found something loan officials could not ignore. He already knew the appraisal was inflated when she paid $93,000 for this house.
I've had plumbing issues, I've had roofing issues.
Already knew damage from a fire here was concealed, but what the people who were about to sell this house didn't know was the down payment to buy it didn't come from Sharita Richardson.
There's 1,001 papers to buy a house, and some of them actually, you know, you understand, and some of them you don't.
The company about to foreclose on this house now says because there was an allegation of fraud involving the loan, the foreclosure is stopped.
So that's the first one that you got.
Her attorney found the canceled checks that reveal what apparently happened, that a mortgage broker gave Richardson money to make a down payment, that a copy of the check made out to the seller was faxed to the California company making the loan so Richardson would qualify. The next day, she returned to her credit union where the check was voided and a new one made out to the man who gave her the money to begin with.
They were my financial people, so I figured, you know, they know more about buying a house than, you know, so whatever they said do, I was just following it.
Back live now, Sharita Richardson says she was never told that money was supposed to be used for a down payment. In fact, she says she told the mortgage broker that she'd only saved enough to pay the closing costs, and she was told that there would be no problem. For now, she remains in the house while her lawyer continues to negotiate. We are live at 60th and Swope Parkway. Back to you.
Bev Chapman, thank you very much. Her lawyer is in the process of trying to have the house reappraised at its actual current value, a process known as a cram down that's being debated in Congress.
I'm really excited to present to you an important new tool that every practitioner and advocate needs to have in their toolbox, and that is a plain-on document scanner. This is a handheld and obviously very portable document scanner. What this device allows you to do is go to the courthouse, and as you're examining a file, run this down the page just like that. When you get back to your office, you'll have a perfect PDF copy of the exhibits that appear in the file. This is important for all of us because we need to really be documenting all the questionable conduct, all the bad examples of fraud and affidavit problems that we see in all these files. Obviously, some of the real significant law firms out there like ICE Legal and Lisa Epstein from Foreclosure Hamlet have done a real good job of collecting examples of bad documents that are in these files. What we're all aware of now is that the tens of thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of foreclosure files across the state and frankly across the country are populated with nothing but fraudulent, questionable, maybe criminally fraudulent documents. We hope that these files are being preserved by courts, but I have the fear that across the state, judges are just granting summary judgment, granting judgments knowing full well that the evidence within the file doesn't pass muster from an evidentiary standpoint. But what this real neat tool here is, a real practical way for you to be collecting your evidence in advance and saving money at the same time. I invite everyone to visit the website here and go and find this portable handheld scanner. It'll be a real important tool for your practice. Please share with me any documents that you copy with one of these handheld scanners that you think are questionable so that we can share this with the rest of the world and share it with judges who are caring about this foreclosure fraud fight and wanting to do something about it. Happy fighting, everyone.
say that although I'm Angela Hills, I represent the we, not just me. Because this is not only happening to me, this is happening all across the United States of America. It is happening to each and every one of us, regardless of race, color, creed, nationality. I live in Southeast Portland with my 2 children and our pets. I have wonderful neighbors that I dearly love and respect. My story began 3.5 years ago when my adult foster care home business of nearly a decade closed and my income was dramatically reduced. Like so many homeowners, I struggled to hold on to my home, finding work where I could and struggling to work with a bank that was disinterested in working with me. And like many others, I was given a false sense of hope by my bank, Wells Fargo. They set me up with a trial modification, but even while I was making those payments, and I made all of them, they had me on a dual-track process and were continuing to foreclose. Homeowners in this situation make trial modification payments in good faith. We are led to believe they are a path to stability and a future in our home. But there is no good faith by the banks. Every month, I would provide new information, sometimes the same information over and over again. Every month I would talk to someone new at the bank, never the same person twice. I was treated like a loan number, not like a human being. It was a rabbit trail to nowhere. I never once felt like I was working with an institution that had a single ounce of interest or care for working with me, keeping me in my home, or any vested interest in the success of my community. I played by their rules. I've played by the rules my whole life. But playing by the rules doesn't matter when you're dealing with an institution that can rewrite the rules to suit their own financial greed. Wells Fargo is not the only big institution at fault in my story either. Freddie Mac, an organization funded by our tax dollars and which is supposed to exist to help support struggling homeowners, has purchased my home on a short sale. And instead of working with me, they have proceeded to evict me. This morning, the judge ruled that Wells Fargo and Freddie Mac have to play by the rules. Freddie Mac, that would be a time to cheer. Freddie Mac moved to evict me before they had followed all the proper procedures. The judge has agreed to hear my complaints. The burden is now on the banks to prove they haven't broken the rules. I'll need the support from all of you in the coming weeks. As a community, it is time for us to draw a line. It is time that the banks are held responsible for this economic crisis. That's right. They used to profit from foreclosures and mortgage balances that far exceed their property values. My children and I are now faced with a terrifying choice. Planning ahead, we recently visited a homeless shelter. It was devastating and shocking for all of us. As a medical professional and a successful small business owner, I never would have thought in a million years that I might be facing homelessness. But that is not much of a choice. So with those supporters gathered around me today, I'm choosing to stay in my home. That's right. And my place in this community, which I love. If more and more of us take this stand, we will send a loud and clear message to the banks. We saved you with bailouts when you needed it most. You are now back on your feet and making profits. While thousands of us struggle in our neighborhoods, you got bailed out. Now you're kicking us out? No! It is time for you to take responsibility for your prosperity. Prosperity that is built on the backs of working people and homeowners across this country. Stop foreclosing on our homes at the cost of our communities.
All right. Banks got bailed out. We got sold out.
Banks got bailed out.
We got sold out.
Banks got bailed out.
We got sold out.
Welcome back to the most news in the morning as job cuts and the housing crisis catch more and more homeowners in the crossfire. Mortgages and defaults are skyrocketing. But one congresswoman says she's sick of bailouts for Wall Street and nothing for the folks who might soon be living on Main Street. She's telling her constituents to become squatters in their own homes. Drew Griffin has the story.
The notices came to her home in April. Andrea Geis's bank foreclosed on her. Behind in payments, out of work, a husband sick, she had nowhere to go. So she decided to follow the advice of her congresswoman and go nowhere. Geis is part of a new movement in the housing crisis, squatters.
For lack of a better term, you're kind of squatting in this house, aren't you?
Basically, yes.
More than 4,000 properties were foreclosed on in Toledo's Lucas County last year. This year, it could be worse. Elected officials are saying Toledo is not in a recession, it is a depression. It is this bleak backdrop that inspired Toledo Congresswoman Marcy Kaptur to take the floor of the House earlier this month to tell her constituents to stay put.
So I say to the American people, you'll be squatters in your own homes. Don't you leave.
Kaptur says she has had it with government bailouts for Wall Street banks, but nothing for homeowners. She is advocating for a legal revolution, a demand that not one of her constituents leaves their home without an attorney and a fight.
Even if they've been foreclosed on, don't leave.
If they've had no legal representation of a high quality, I tell them stay in their homes.
Kaptur is behind a strategy called Produce the Note. Mortgages have been so divvied up on Wall Street that banks are having a hard time finding that original paperwork, adding a delay to foreclosures. She is also pushing banks to rework loans, especially those banks getting bailouts and holding mortgages of folks getting tossed out.
They're vultures. They prey on our property assets. And I guess the reason I'm so adamant on this is because I know property law and its power to protect the individual homeowner. And I believe that 99.9% of our people have not had good legal representation in this.
Without a lawyer, Andrea Geis bought a $147,000 home with nearly $40,000 down.
I should have had an attorney. I really should have had the attorney. I did not know.
She admits she didn't read the paperwork, didn't learn until it was too late. She had a subprime loan. Her payments of $883 a month jumped in a year to more than $1,500. When it did, she stopped paying.
So they foreclosed on you?
They have foreclosed on me.
So what do the banks say? Well, the law firm representing the bank in Geis's foreclosure declined comment. Another one of the banks Geis believes holds her note, Wells Fargo, Kieran, said it wouldn't comment on individual cases, but tries to work with homeowners. Well, now that homeowner, backed by her congressman, Kieran, is simply not budging.
It is, and it's a situation that we see replayed all over the country. The other thing is people say they have been having trouble as they try to reach out, make contact, and figure out if there's some way to rework their loan.
Yeah, in many cases, you just can't talk to the person. You get in these phone trees, or you're dealing with brokers who are working for the loans. It's very, very difficult to get through the red tape.
Wow, very interesting stuff. We'll see if the Congresswoman gets other support from her colleagues as well. Drew Griffin, thanks so much.